Welcome to Shul.com. We are learning the laws of Shabbat for Sfaradim by Rabbi Nachson. It's a great book, fantastically written. We are up to traveling by train or plane before or on Shabbat. 94. One may not travel on an intracity train or subway on Shabbat, even if the train is only electrically powered and stops by itself at each station, since one will have to handle money or bus tickets, which are considered mukseh. However, if one was able to pay beforehand, one may be lenient in specific cases, such as a doctor who must travel to the hospital on Shabbat, or a mohel who needs to perform a brit milah, which is in a distant area. There are essentially 6 points that one must be careful with, even when one gets halachic permission to travel on a city bus or a train. A. The train must only travel within the city. B. One may not carry anything mukseh, such as money or a bus pass. C. The bus driver must be a non-Jew, and most of the people on the bus must not be Jewish. D. If one is in a place where there is no edu, one may not carry any object with him. E. When one wants to get off, one may not press any button in order to signal that the train should stop. F. One must do his utmost to do so discreetly. Let's take a look at the notes on the bottom. It says here in Chazon Avadiyah Shabbat, volume 1, page 130, and he brings also in Yalkut Yosef, who discusses other cases where this may be permitted. If one is in such a situation, a rabbi should be contacted before entering a bus or train on Shabbat, and see also the Sitz Eliezer. He brings down Igrot Moshe Minchat Yitzchak on some cases where a person would be permitted to travel on a train or a bus on Shabbat. 95. One may not travel on an intercity train even for the purpose of a mitzvah. Okay, since doing so violates the prohibition of leaving the Tichum, about 11.5 kilometers from the city, on Shabbat. Traveling on a train is also prohibited, even if one entered the train on Erev Shabbat and will not exit the train until after Shabbat. So that's like maybe on those trains that go on those long trips, those 3-4 day trips where they're touring an area. And even if most of the people on the train are not Jewish. Similarly, it's prohibited to travel on a plane on Shabbat, even if the plane will take off before Shabbat begins. 137, he writes here on the bottom, he brings to the Yalkut Yosef, Halachah Beruran, the Tzitz Eliezer, Igrot Moshe, and Benchat Yitzchak, and Serideh Esh. So, it seems like traveling on a train does not carry itself like a boat, because a boat, if a person got on before Shabbat, can stay on Shabbat and then get off after Shabbat. And on the boat, we also said that you can get off on Shabbat with certain conditions. Here, on a train, it is a problem. 96. One who is traveling on a plane on Erev Shabbat and for whatever reason will end up landing on Shabbat should do so as follows. So you got on the plane on Erev Shabbat, for some reason or another, got extended, or some reason it had to land on Shabbat. A. Before Shabbat begins, one should put all of his mukseh items in a separate bag that can be given to airport security until Shabbat is over. Similarly, one should try to fill out any forms necessary for passage before Shabbat. B. Shabbat begins according to the place that one is flying over, and therefore one must calculate accordingly. Okay, so Shabbat begins in the place, in the location that he's flying over at that moment. C. One who needs to use the bathroom on the plane should ask a non-Jew to open the door for him if the light will go on and off once the door is closed or opened. If this is not possible, then one may open it with a shinui or indirect manner, maybe with the opposite hand, his foot, or as follows. D. One may exit the plane but must give his belongings, including his passport, to a non-Jew in order to be taken off the plane, and one must remain in the airport for the remainder of Shabbat. E. One may give his passport to the non-Jews working in the airport for it to be inspected and stamped. F. One may pass through the metal detectors if needed. G. One cannot go from terminal to terminal if one needs to go outside while holding items, since there is no eruv hatzirot, and therefore one should give his items to a non-Jew to carry for him and offer to pay him for his services. Okay, now the next topic, traveling further than 3 parsaot on Erev Shabbat. 97. It is prohibited to travel on Erev Shabbat a distance of 3 parsa, the time it takes to travel 3 hours and 36 minutes, or about 12 kilometers. Okay, from the beginning of the day, since one must have enough time that he can prepare properly for Shabbat. However, it is permitted to do so if one knows that all the preparations of Shabbat will be done by someone else and finished in time for Shabbat. So let's say a person's flying from New York to Miami. It's a 2 to 2.5 hour flight. Sometimes it could be 3 hours, depending on certain conditions, or if it's a stopover, or if they don't want to travel as fast. So what would be the case there? Well, if the guy's married and all of his Shabbat things are being taken care of by his wife, and the guy doesn't really do all that stuff, he's just traveling and he's going to be there, then there is a leniency based on this. 98, the distance mentioned above applies when traveling by foot. Okay. However, when driving in a car, one may even travel further than 3 parsaot, provided that one reaches destination before Shabbat, before the first third of the day is passed. Let's take a look at 145 on the bottom. It brings down the Magen Abraham in 249-1 and Halacha Berura. Now, previously he wrote here, obviously this does not permit for one to travel very close to the onset of Shabbat, as one should not begin to travel if he's unsure if he will arrive at his destination in time for Shabbat. So obviously we're talking about a situation where the guy knows he will make it in time. 99, it is permitted and even preferable to travel home, even if one will not have enough time to pray for Shabbat, if one is in a place where he will not be able to keep Shabbat properly, or if it is a dangerous area. So if he knows he won't keep Shabbat, and traveling on Friday, maybe more than this, but just making sure he can be in the right area would be important, because alternatively he may not keep the Shabbat. 100, on Friday, a person who works far from home should leave work early enough so that he will be able to get home with ample time to pray for Shabbat, even if there turns out to be traffic along the way. Let's take a look on the bottom here. It says, Or Letzion, volume 2, 16-6, who states that one should leave work with at least an extra hour of time than one usually has in case of traffic. You know when this happens? In the summer, when we go to Deal, I work in Brooklyn, and the traffic is not normal. Here he's telling you make an hour. You need like 2 hours, sometimes more if you leave Friday after a certain time. The traffic is just really, really long, and sometimes it could really be an issue. The Kesot HaShulchan 69-5 adds that one should also take into account having potential car troubles. Also another issue. See also Halacha Berura, volume 13, page 388, in Yalkut Yosef Shabbat, volume 1, book 1, page 349. The Kaf Haim in 249-4 and the Mishnah Berura 249-3 state that one should not rationalize and state, I have plenty of time before Shabbat, as what may seem to be a lot of time is not what it seems, and one may come to desecrate the Shabbat because he overestimated the amount of time that he had before the Shabbat. Number 101. One should not take a taxi driven by a non-religious Jew too close to Shabbat, since one will be causing him to drive back to his home on Shabbat. Wow, very interesting. So you have here a bunch of halachot of how to travel and what to do on Erev Shabbat. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.